We're a long way from home, and the structure behind me goes away far back in time as well. It's Malbork Castle that's behind me in northern Poland. It's a fortress of the Teutonic Order of Knights many years ago, almost 1,000 years ago. I want to read a couple of verses from the book of Revelation. Chapter 6 and verse 15 says, "Then the kings of the earth and the great ones and the generals and the rich and the powerful and everyone, slave and free, hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains, calling to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who is seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who can stand?" And then again in the book of Isaiah in chapter 32, verse 1 says, "Behold, the king shall reign in righteousness, and princes shall rule in judgment. And a man shall be as a hiding place from the wind, and a covert from the tempest, as rivers of water in a dry place, as the shadow of a great rock in a weary land." And we look to God to bless his word to us this morning. The castle behind us is apparently the largest castle in existence in the world. It's really a complex of castles. Interestingly as well, at the heart of this place is a hospital, and it was set up by an order of knights, a Teutonic order, who, amongst other things, were charged with looking after the sick who came from the Crusades to Jerusalem. But round about the whole structure of the hospital is an extensive fortress. It's maybe, I suppose, on the surface it looks a bit over the top, but certainly if you go in it with the walls and multiple moats, it's quite a place. And apparently it was never ever taken, it was never defeated nor destroyed. Of course, it was built for a good reason. It was built because they perceived the threat against them to justify that kind of a structure. And I suppose that's true in many aspects of our life. We tend to react proportionate to the threat that we face. We've seen that, haven't we, over the last couple of years with pretty drastic measures being imposed because of the threat of COVID. Well, in Revelation chapter 6, men have a very extreme reaction to what is happening. They're hiding. They're hiding under the rocks and hiding in the mountains from the wrath of the Lamb. Humanity in the book of Revelation is seeing another side to the meek and lowly Jesus that we're maybe more familiar with in the Gospels. They're seeing another side to the one that said, "Suffer the little children to come unto me." They see another side to the one that instructed Peter to put up his sword and not to use the sword. They're seeing another side to the one who was led as a lamb to the slaughter and who willingly and voluntarily allowed himself to be spat upon, beaten and crucified. This is the Son of God, remember. He allowed himself to have that done to him. But in Revelation, chapter number 6, we see a completely different side to the Lord Jesus. We see the Son of God and God himself pouring out his anger and his wrath upon a world that has rejected the only means of salvation, the Lamb who shed his blood, the Lamb who gave himself as a sacrifice for our sin. Men have rejected him, despised him, and in fact persecuted his people, and now the anger and wrath of God is being poured out upon them. The response seems to be reasonable. The rivers have been turned to blood, the stars have fallen from the sky, the seas have been poisoned, there's massive earthquake activity, disease, famine and war. And so the response seems to be reasonable to this vast and amazing wrath and anger of God that's been poured out. One of the great tragedies though in Revelation 6 is that they're a bit late. You see, if you were to go back to the book of Isaiah in chapter number 32, God has provided a rock to protect them and us. Perhaps it's only really in the light of the events of Revelation that we can understand Isaiah 32. But Isaiah 32, speaking about the Lord Jesus, if you read the chapter you'll see that, speaks about the Lord Jesus Christ as being a hiding place from extremity, from the tempest, the wind, as being a great rock in a weary land. Sometimes in life we can leave things just a bit too late, and sadly I've seen that over the years in my own practice of medicine. If folks had just come a few months earlier, if maybe they'd come a year earlier, or maybe if they had taken the advice when it had been given, things would have been, and it would have turned out so much more, so much better. And here in Isaiah 32, God had provided a rock as a hiding place from the extremity of his wrath. No one could really fully anticipate what the anger and wrath of God would be towards men who rejected him. It would be extreme, the extreme description that we have in the book of Revelation. But you know, the greatness and the glory of the salvation that is there in the Lord Jesus is there for a reason. It's there because of the greatness and the extremity of the anger and wrath of God. It's there because God is a black and white God. It's there because God is a God in whose presence there can be no sin. God is a God who can allow no defilement into his heaven. God is a God who cannot tolerate man and his wickedness, man and his sin. And so God has given an extreme salvation. He's given a salvation that involves the taking of his Son, the crucifying of his Son, the rejection of his Son, the whipping and beating of his Son, the suffering of his Son for sin. God gave his Son in such an extreme way because the reality of his judgment is also so extreme. And in Isaiah 32, there is this tremendous offer for each of us to have a castle, something like this, a castle impenetrable, a castle because the danger is great, and he shall be as a hiding place from the wind, a cover from the tempest, a river of water in a dry place, the shadow of a great rock in a weary land. As you and I look forward into foreverness, we need something great to protect and preserve us, and we find that in his Son, Jesus Christ. He who has the Son has life. He who does not have the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God abides upon him. Thanks very much.